Oh, excuse me for a second. I'm pondering. Now, this isn't working out. I need to lean back in my chair. Oh, there we go. Yes, this is how one truly ponders the events of the day. Yes. Okay. Here's a question for you. Before Shanks became an emperor, because we know he did not become a member of the Yonko until 6 years ago, right? Which is relatively recent compared to the other emperors, like Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido. They were all emperors for like easily over a decade, in probably Whitebeard and Big Mom's case, several decades before, you know, Shanks became an emperor, okay? So before he joined, was it just called the Three Emperors? Or was there another emperor that Shanks killed and then took his spot? Maybe, who knows? I mean, this was 6 years ago, so this was back when Luffy was still training at Fuchsia Village. You know, he wasn't keeping up with the events of the day. You know, it really does blow my mind that Luffy really did no research into the world he was heading out into. He was just like, I'm gonna train every day with my devil fruit, and then I'm gonna get a tiny little dinghy, and I'm just gonna set sail. And it's just like, don't you want to know anything about, like, who are the strong pirates in the world? Who are some rivals? Who are some other big names in the world? Don't you at least want to know the names of the strongest pirates out there? Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. I'm the main character of this manga. Please, everything will work out. Kaizoku Oni, Orewanar, and then Luffy just sets sail. But just something I wanted to ponder there, because this video is going to be a video talking about how if the Yonko, the current Yonko and also the past Yonko, because we're going to be talking about Whitebeard as well, would they still have been emperors if they did not have a devil fruit? And automatically, Shanks is exempted from this video because he just immediately is like, we don't have to do a what if for him. We already know he could be a Yonko without a devil fruit because he's a Yonko without a devil fruit. I guess, like, it's possible he could have a devil fruit. He clearly did not have one back in the day when he saved Luffy from drowning because he could obviously swim. I mean, he still lost an arm in the process, but hey, I mean, come on. Who hasn't lost an arm while swimming in the water, right? Absolutely. But, you know, that was over 12 years ago at this point in the story, so I guess it's feasible he could have eaten a devil fruit at some point, but for right now, from what we know, Shanks is the only member of the Emperors that does not have a devil fruit, and actually has the smallest crew out of all of the emperors and is still worthy of that title and is still, like, worthy of the fear that the name red-haired Shanks resonates throughout the world, okay? Like, he's an ally of Luffy, at least we can assume. Like I said, there's a lot of theories out there on Shanks being evil! But once again, that's a discussion for another day. Ostensibly, right now, Luffy and Shanks are, like, you know, on good terms. They're allies with one another. But for the vast majority of the world, when red-haired Shanks comes to your town, probably not, you know, there's probably going to be a lot of fear, you know, run into the houses and bar them and, you know, board the windows shut. Basically kind of a situation there. But anyway, yeah, Shanks is a badass. We all know this. But what about the other members of the Emperors, okay? So let's start with, I don't know, Kaido. You know, that's topical. You know, Kaido, he's got the power of the mythical Ua Ua no Mi, model Seiryu, as your dragon of legend, okay? So, thanks you to Animanda, by the way, for the awesome perler bead art of the Ua Ua no Mi. Okay, so here's the thing. So, a lot of the emperors already were very powerful even before they ate their devil fruits, okay? We know Big Mom, even at her young age, was powerful enough to burn down and almost destroy an entire village on Elbaf. Like, she was one-shotting giants, for God's sake, okay? And that was before she had the power of the Soul Fruit. Kaido is much the same, okay? We know he consumed his devil fruit at God Valley 38 years ago, right at the tail end of the Rocks Pirates' lifespan, okay? The Rocks Pirates were annihilated. Well, they weren't all annihilated. Some of them might have died. Rocks purportedly died, or at least vanished on that day. Big Mom, Whitebeard, everybody, they survived and went to make their own crews, okay? So Kaido, at that point, was 21 years old. And we see in a flashback, at least we can assume this is what he looks like. He was in silhouette a little bit, but he was still a pretty bulky guy, right? He had some muscles. He still had Hasaikai, his Kanabo back then. He was pretty damn powerful. He still probably had his Thunder Bagara techniques and everything like that. And since we're not talking about devil fruits in this video, like what if they didn't have devil fruits, obviously Haki would be the main focus, okay? And the idea is also, if they did not have a devil fruit to focus on training that, they would probably put way more of their time and effort into training their haki, okay? So Kaido would still have had Conqueror's haki, insanely powerful armament, being able to combine armament with Conqueror's, observation. I think we saw Kaido use observation a few times, but it might actually be more high-spec because he did not have his Devil Fruit, okay? But we're not talking about whether or not he would still be powerful without a Devil Fruit. I think that is indisputable for pretty much every single member of the Emperors. Even taking away their Devil Fruit, it's not going to be an easy fight, okay? But would they still be the symbol of terror throughout the world? Would they still be a member of the Emperors, which I remind you, the three great powers that balance the entire world are the Marines, the Warlords, and the Emperors. And that has already begun to shift in the world because of the loss of the Warlord system, and now the SSG is taking its spot. Will it be able to live up to the Warlord's power level? Who knows? I guess we'll, wait to see what happens there, right? And so then you have the Emperors there, okay? So they're like literally only a group of 4 pirates together are able to match the power of the Marines and also the Warlords in there as well. Like, that's that balance of power that is maintained in the One Piece world, okay? The world government is not really a member of the balance of power. They're sort of in the background because you got to remember, like, the world government, at large, it's not a lot of, like, fighters. Like, the Marines are the fighting branch of the world government. They have the Cypher Pole as well, but the Marines are like a mobilized, military unit, okay? And they have like a lot, like all of the fighters, the vast majority of the fighters that are working for the world government are in the Marines, okay, right? Okay. So, you got to understand that's the power structure of the world. It's a big deal. It's not enough just to be a relatively strong pirate. You have to be a really, really powerful pirate, okay, to be a member of the Emperors, right? That's why a lot of people are even on the fence right now. I mean, I guess right now in the story, Luffy could be considered an Emperor, especially if he defeats Kaido, but that's why people were on the fence for a while of like, okay, Luffy was called the 5th Emperor by Morgans, but should he really be receiving that title? Is he on that level yet? Okay, so I would say Kaido without his Devil Fruit, he works on his haki, and he still tries to, work with Orochi, and I still think Orochi would back him there, because I still think Kaido would have a lot of people working for him. And in actuality, even if you want to get into the idea of he would never eat a Smile himself, like he never had the Dragon Fruit, and even after Smile production began to, like Doflamingo and Caesar were working on that, even if he did not eat a Smile himself, I still think Kaido would be, ridiculously powerful. We saw that for the most part in these battles, he seems to prefer, when he was fighting the Scabbards, he goes into his giant dragon form to just dominate them, like the idea is like, hey, it's basically Kaido's win button most of the time. He just goes into giant dragon form, throws a Boro Breath, throws a devastating gust, throws some lightning bolts down on the battlefield. Most of the time, who the hell's going to contend with that, right? He usually prefers going to dragon form first, and then if the fight seems to drag on a bit, like, oh, dragon on a bit, maybe then he'll turn back into his regular form and then just fight that way. It took a long time for him to even go into his hybrid form. He didn't go into his hybrid form at all when he fought against the Scabbards. It wasn't until like halfway through the fight with the Worst Generation that he decided, hey, this is finally getting pretty fun. I think I'll go into my hybrid form to show that I'm serious, okay? So yeah, obviously you can chalk a lot of the damage absorption and recovery rate, you could chalk a lot of that up to his Dragon Fruit, because it is a zone, and just baseline from what we understand about zones, not even getting into mythical or awakened zones, is they give you a boost in stamina, recovery, strength, speed, all that kind of jazz, right? So yeah, that'll lower Kaido's abilities, and he obviously won't be able to use the Boro Breaths and stuff anymore, but just in terms of being a really big, tough guy that swings a Kanabo around with an insane amounts of haki infused with it, Kaido, yeah, he wouldn't be able to, like, lift up an island with flame clouds anymore. He might still be able just to lift it up with his pure muscles alone and just throw it or something like that. But no, I still think Kaido, like, if he takes his Kanabo, no Devil Fruit his entire life, so he just trains with his haki all day, every day, he swings that full force with all the Conquerors and Armament haki in there, it might be able to level mountains, okay? Like, it might be able to do that now, honestly. Like, they're fighting up on the roof of Onigashima, Luffy and Kaido. He's swinging that Kanabo around. It's just blowing apart boulders and shit, like, nonchalantly. So, yeah, I still think Kaido would be a Yonko. I still think, and also the pedigree of just him being on Rox's crew, I think would also lend to, like, him gathering. Like, Kaido would not have a problem gathering a crew together. It might not happen in the same way, because I like to think the reason the government captured him and sent him to Punk Hazard where he met King originally was because, of course, you know, Vegapunk wanted to do the experiments on his dragon fruit. So if he doesn't have the dragon fruit, maybe he wouldn't have been captured, he would not have met King. It maybe would have taken him a little bit longer to become a Yonko, right? But I still think everything would have sort of played out in a similar way. He would have trained, he would have gotten stronger with his haki, he would have joined forces with Orochi at Wano, he would have developed this plan, he would have gathered a whole crew of the Beast Pirates together, perhaps King and Queen and Jack would have joined as well, the Smile production would have gotten started, all of that stuff would have been there. It's probably just that, yeah, he would not be on the level of insane power he's at now, and everything, honestly, probably could have continued pretty much the same. I still think he would have defeated Luffy in the first battle at Okabore Town. It's just that this overall battle right now at Onigashima, which has lasted, like, well over, like, I think close to 50 chapters from when the Scabbards first attacked Kaido to where we're at right now. I think it might be over 50 chapters. And it wasn't consistent. Obviously, we cut back and forth, you know, between the fights. But still, I just think the only difference is this fight we're in right now would have ended a lot sooner. You know, with the Scabbards, you know, fighting Kaido, and then the Worst Generation, like, it might have just ended there. Like, the Scabbards take a lot of damage there, but they also manage to weaken Kaido, and then the Worst Generation shows up, and, you know, maybe after they weaken Kaido with their combined attacks and everything like that, maybe when it's Luffy and Kaido just themselves on top of the roof, maybe their fight would have lasted a lot shorter, because, you know, Kaido doesn't have the dragon fruit to fall back on, but he still would have been ridiculously powerful. So yes, I still think Kaido would have been able to be a Yonko even without the dragon fruit. Moving on, let's just talk about Big Mom next, because of course Big Mom, you know, Kaido and her teamed up, so let's just move on with her. So here's something interesting, and this is something that's always been debated, like what exactly like makes a Yonko? Like what certain criteria do you need to have to be considered an emperor by the world government, right? And this changes from person to person, but generally speaking, it seems to be a tremendous amount of power and a large territory that you rule over. Now, it doesn't have to be a single territory like Totland or Wano. I don't think Shanks has, like Shanks does not have his own version of Totland, right? Like his own nation of, like, 70 islands or something that he calls home. Totland wasn't that big. It was only, like, 30 or something. But still, Shanks has, like, a bunch of islands scattered all over the world. I think the same thing with Whitebeard, pretty much, right? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, like, you can debate whether that's all you need to be considered an emperor, but that's probably part of the consideration for the world at large to consider you one of the emperors. Remember, being an emperor is not like you fill out an application and send it into the world government and be like, we'll review your application and get back to you within 10 to 30 business days, you know, okay, you're approved to be a Yonko. No, it's like, you're a symbol of terror in the world. You're a ridiculously powerful pirate that could honestly challenge the world government. I'll put it very simply to you. You are considered an emperor when the idea of just one of them, like Whitebeard, heading to Marineford is enough for the Marines to shit so much bricks that, I'm sorry, Barry, for them to decide to mobilize their entire military unit, all the admirals, all the vice admirals on call for your arrival, plus the fleet admiral. Everybody has to be there. That's when you're an emperor, okay? So, going back to Big Mom now, she has a large territory of Totland. However, how much of that territory exists because of her soul fruit? I would say, out of all of the emperors that we have known throughout the story, that includes Whitebeard, out of all of the emperors, Big Mom, I think, is the one that is the most reliant on her devil fruit, because we see her influence all through Totland through the soul fruit, and she consumed this fruit when she was 6 years old, through Mother Caramel, from what we can assume, okay? So the idea is, yeah, she can create her homies using the souls of, you know, herself and also others around her to create these sentient, autonomous, living beings out of inanimate objects or regular animals, like Randolph was a rabbit that was a homie that had the power of the soul fruit inside of him, okay? So, yeah, and through that, she's basically able to create her own army. Now, she has her army just through her own pirate crew as well as her family, which is one of the same, although there are members like Tamago and Peckhams that were not members of her family, that were still members of the crew. So she still has all that, But at the end of the day, it's kind of like a situation with Moria. Even if Big Mom lost her entire pirate crew, she could just make a whole new crew using the power of the Soul Fruit. Now, she would have to gather the souls up first, just like Moria would have to gather the shadows up first. But still, having that to fall back on is insane. Right? Okay. But now I want you to imagine Big Mom if she never had the Soul Fruit. Like I said, she was one-shotting giants at Elbath at age 5, okay? So she's still ridiculously powerful, and just like Kaido, she would grow up, she would learn more about hockey, she would focus more on that, she would still have conquerors, she would still have armament, the combination moves, and everything like that. She would still fight with a sword, it just wouldn't be Napoleon, but she would fight with a sword. Oh, well, she could still call it Napoleon, it just wouldn't be a homie. It wouldn't be able to light on fire at will and, you know, be able to shoot lightning or whatever, but it would still be a really powerful sword she would have, right? And actually, interesting, I'm picturing Big Mom without a devil fruit, her having like various pieces of like armor and swords and weapons named after her homies, but they just wouldn't be homies, you know what I mean? Like, so she would have a sword named Napoleon, and she would maybe have a shield with like a lightning bolt or like a maybe a flaming shield she could get with like dials or something, and then the shield would be named Prometheus, and maybe she would have armor and she would name the armor Zeus or something like that, and the armor was electric or something, because you could do that with like various dial technology and other stuff that exists in One Piece, right? So I'm picturing her like that, right? Now, would she have the territory like she does now? She wouldn't. I don't think she would. Totland would still exist, but it would be a very different place. I think by necessity, it would have to be a lot smaller, because the reason she's able to control it the way she does, she has such an iron grip on the entire island, on her whole like country, is because she has literal eyes everywhere. Okay, she has, you know, she can turn, you know, benches and barrels into homies, and they can watch and see everything that's happening in her land. So if there's any dissent, if there's any, you know, thought of revolution or rebellion or anything like that, she knows immediately, okay? So I think by necessity, Totland might have to just be Whole Cake Island and maybe just a few islands surrounding it. It might just be Whole Cake. All right, because that's the one island that she can control just because she's there and her presence and also her own crew. She would still have, I don't really think that would change how many children she had. I still think she would have like 85 something children like she does now. And her kids would still have devil fruit powers. Like Katakuri would still have the mochi fruit, and, you know, Perospero would still have the lick fruit and everything like that. It's just that she herself would not have a devil fruit, right? So Totland would be a lot smaller, maybe limited to just Whole Cake Island. The Whole Cake Island, like, arc, the Totland arc, when Luffy and everybody goes to rescue Sanji, that would be very different, because the whole Bewitching Woods part, you know, with Brule and everything, like, Brule would still be there, and she would still have the mirror fruit, but the whole thing with, like, being able to, you know, being fooled by the forest and stuff, that would not happen. It would actually just be a way less interesting arc, because part of what made Totland so interesting was this weird juxtapositioning of, like, here's Alice in Wonderland crossed with like the evil of Big Mom sort of thing. And Alice in Wonderland was already sort of very sinister in the underlying message there, okay? So without that, it would be probably like a little bit of a less interesting arc. We would not have King Bomb, unfortunately. Nami would not have Zeus. That's another, you know, that's another downgrade. Nami would not have the power of Zeus in the Climate Act, right? So, and once again, same thing with Kaido. I think Big Mom would just be a lot easier to defeat. She would still have the power of, like, the Iron Balloon. I still think the assassination plot that Beiji attempted would still fail, because I don't think that really had anything much to do with the Soul Fruit. I think that was just her exerting a tremendous amount of Conqueror's Haki with her scream that just knocked everybody out around her. Maybe it involved the Soul Fruit a little bit there, but you could see it Conqueror's Haki. You could see it both ways, honestly, there. I still think the assassination plot would fail regardless, because, you know, the Scream would destroy the KX launchers before it reached her. I don't think Luffy would be able to defeat Big Mom one-on-one at Totland or anything like that. But once again, at Wano, you know, the battle would drag on. She would not be able to use the fire ability. She wouldn't be able to fly. That would be a big downside. That would basically mean then, like, that moment, if she managed to make it to the scene there, well, she wouldn't even really be able to chase after the Thousand Sunny at the end of Totland because she wouldn't be able to ride on top of Zeus or Prometheus. She would still be able to move around using the sea slug that Perospero created, but that would be a problem if she fell in the water. I think just Big Mom would just fall in the water a lot if she didn't have, you know, her homies, if she didn't have Zeus, Prometheus, or Zeus around her, right? My God, yeah. And then the scene where, like, Law, like, shoves her, like, hits her with the boulder and knocks her off the side of Wano. She would probably just fall in the ocean right there. So, yeah, I still think she could become a Yonko. So, yeah, I guess for Big Mom, I still think she could become a Yonko, but once again, would probably take a little bit longer for her to achieve that status, a lot more training, a lot more building up her forces. But I still think, like, just with the threat of her having her whole family, and if her family, if, like, Katakuri, Daifuku, Oven, everybody still had their devil fruits, I think that would still be a force reckoned with enough that, you know, she would be considered an emperor, okay? Moving on, let's talk about Whitebeard next. Let's just go through all the former members of the Rocks Pirates, absolutely. Would Whitebeard be considered an emperor without the Gura Gura no Mi? This is gonna take a long time for me to ponder. Yes, absolutely he would. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Really? Whitebeard? Whitebeard doesn't need the Gura Gura no Mi. Whitebeard didn't even, fun fact, Whitebeard didn't even use his devil fruit during Marineford. That was just Whitebeard punching the air, and it cracked and caused shockwaves just on its own. He didn't even need to use his devil fruit power. It was like a human that eats the human fruit. Whitebeard eats the Gura Gura no Mi, and he's just like, oh man, I was already able to create shockwaves and earthquakes wherever I walked. This is useless. And then he just moved on with the rest of his day. Okay, obviously, that's going a little bit overboard. Obviously, the Gura Gura no Mi is an insanely powerful devil fruit. It's a paramecia that has the ability to destroy the world if used, you know, in the correct way, or in the incorrect way, I guess. As Sengoku stated, you know, that man has the power to destroy the world. Obviously, he would not have that level of, like, natural disaster, Day After Tomorrow, 2012, you know, all these disaster movies. He wouldn't have that power at his fingertips. But even so, I would bring up this scenario to you. If Edward Newgate punches you in the face, regardless of whether or not he has a devil fruit, your ass is going down, okay? Unless if you're Akainu, which I'm still pissed off about that kinda. You know, I still think he should have just died right there. But okay, Whitebeard was weakened. He did have a hole in his chest at this point, so alright, I'll give it to Akainu, whatever. So, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Whitebeard, he punches you, you're going down, unless you're some of the absolute strongest, like, unless you're Goldie Roger, or Silver's Rayleigh, or Garp. You know, you're some of the absolute strongest characters, the admirals, some of the strong other emperors, strongest characters in the story. You know, Whitebeard's regular hockey-infused punch is like the one-shot win button. Like, that's what it is, okay? He would still be super jacked. He would still have his Bicento, Murakumo Giri. He would still have all that jazz. And his hockey would be even stronger. Yes, he would still probably, you know, get the illness later on in his days. And so that would also weaken him. That would go the same way. Yeah, he wouldn't be able to summon a giant tsunami at Marineford. But really, what did the tsunami really do at the end of the day? Aokiji froze it before it could really do anything. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, there was a few scenes where the shockwaves definitely came in handy. He used it to, well, actually, okay, he used it to summon the tsunami and just kind of generally intimidate the Marines. Like, this is what one man is capable of, right? Summoning a natural disaster to Marine HQ. Aokiji froze the tsunami, so that didn't really kill anybody. It just kind of shook all of the Marines, like, literally and, you know, metaphorically and, you know, figuratively. And then he, I think, tried to use his Gura Gura to destroy the retaining wall, that giant, like, the bulkhead that they rose up, and even that wasn't enough to destroy the bulkhead. It just dented it really bad, but it wasn't able to break through it. Let's see. He used it, obviously, in combat to defeat, like, Ronsei the Giant. He, like, used the Quake bubble to, like, destroy his helmet. But I really think Whitebeard could have taken down any of the Giant squad without the Devil Fruit. You get the impression there, like, you know, punching Ronsei in the face with Haki and Conquerors, I think, would have been enough. Whitebeard, by the way, did have Conquerors Haki. It's just because of his illness, it greatly decreased the ability of him able to use it during Marineford. I think there was a moment where he was about to use it to save ace, but he like coughed up blood and he's like, I can't, something like that. It was really sad that we got to see, Whitebeard's final battle when he was so sick, but he was still able to do that much. If you're talking prime Whitebeard, easy, he would be able to use Conquerors, and he did against Roger when they clashed on that island, right? But yeah, I don't even think this needs to be debated or discussed, right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Whitebeard would have still been a Yonko regardless of whether or not he had the Gura Gura no Mi, right? He had the Gura Gura no Mi when he fought Roger, I guess. Did he have it when he first met Odin? Did he have it when he was on the Rocks crew? We don't know. We actually don't know when he consumed his fruit first, but regardless of when he had it, it made him stronger, but he was already pretty powerful even without it, so yeah. And then since Shanks is excluded from this, because he's already awesome, let's just move on to Blackbeard then, as the last member of the Yonko we're talking about today, all right? So, Blackbeard, though. Blackbeard has 2 devil fruits, so he's kind of cheating, so let's take both of those away from him. Okay, well, actually, let's do one and then the other. Would Blackbeard still have become a Yonko over the time skip if he did not steal the Gura Gura no Mi? Like, let's say they showed up to Marineford. Everything was still the same. They showed up to Marineford. They gunned down Whitebeard. He dies. And then they just manage to escape. And they just leave. Like, their plan was to kill Whitebeard rather than stealing fruit. Would Blackbeard have still become a Yonko or was still considered an emperor without him stealing the Gura Gura? I think there would have been a little bit more of discussion about it. There would have been a little bit more of debate. But then, of course, following the Payback War, like if Blackbeard was still able to beat Marco and the rest during the Payback War, I think that would have been the moment where he would have been considered a Yonko. I think that was the moment in the story right now when he was finally considered an emperor. He steals the Gura Gura no Mi and then leaves. And then Whitebeard's remnants of his crew, led by Marco, try to beat him back in the Payback War a year later. Blackbeard wins. And I think that's the moment where it's like, okay, the Whitebeard pirates are no longer emperors. It is now Blackbeard who's an emperor. So I guess it depends, whether or not Blackbeard and his crew would have still been able to defeat Marco without the use of the Gura Gura no Mi, which we know so little about the Payback War, exactly how the scenario went. We know it was stated that by Jinbei, both sides brought reinforcements to that battle, so there was a lot of variables we just don't know about. Like, who were the I'm assuming the reinforcements that Marco brought were the ally captains under Whitebeard. But I don't really know who the allied crew, like maybe Aokiji? I don't know how that would have went. But yeah, that's a little bit debatable, but I still think he would have been considered emperor. Now, would he have been considered an emperor without any devil fruit? If he never had the Yami Yami no Mi, and if he never had the Gura Gura no Mi? Now, let's not undersell Blackbeard here for a moment. Remember, he was the one that gave Shanks his scar, and that was before he had any devil fruit, okay? And Shanks even explained that to Whitebeard. He said, I did not get this scar by being careless, okay? It wasn't a situation where Shanks was drunk and he was fighting and he's like, whatever, these people, Whitebeard's crew are weak today. And then Blackbeard shows up with his Wolverine claws and just scratches Shanks, and Shanks is like, I was careless and I got this scar. No, it implies that Shanks took Blackbeard seriously as a threat, which does make sense because they knew each other from back when they were kids on Roger's crew. Remember, Blackbeard, back when he was just, joined, and then there's Shanks and Buggy on Roger's crew. They fought each other on that island, and then Buggy had the moment where it's like, that guy never sleeps. He's some kind of monster, right? And then I like to think the battles continued every so often. They would clash, and that's how that would go. And so by the time Shanks was Shanks already had the scar when he met Luffy at Fuchsia, right? Yeah, he already had the scar when Shanks was 27 years old. So that means he got it before then. So by the time Shanks fought Blackbeard and got the scar, which was probably somewhere in his early to mid-20s, I would assume, he knew Blackbeard. He knew Teach. He knew the threat that he posed. And they maybe had a one-on-one battle, and, Blackbeard was still able to get one up on Shanks and deal that scar to him. Yeah. So I wouldn't undersell Blackbeard in terms of his power level or his deviousness, or I think he has other abilities going on that have nothing to do with Devil Fruit powers. The fact that he's able to have more than one kind of speaks for that. Yeah, he has hockey. yeah, he's sort of duplicitous and he knows like something about like scheming and stuff. You know, whenever he's not walking directly face first into a wave of poison from Magellan. So that's why I hesitate to say he's this genius schemer that's, you know, like 27 steps above everybody else, because stuff like that happens every now and then, where Blackbeard would have totally died if, you know, Shiryu did not save him. But he has that going for him. And he also has some other ability inside of him. Maybe he has multiple souls or something. That's why he doesn't need to sleep, or multiple personalities or something like that. Something in the One Piece world that makes him able to eat more than one devil fruit. Would he still be considered an emperor, though? I don't think so. I don't think that, because he kind of, like, his whole thing was laying low for the majority of his life, for, like, until he was 40 years old. That's when Blackbeard made his move. When he was 40 years old, when he killed Thatch and got the Yami Yami no Mi, that's when his plan finally got put into motion. He was a nobody up until then. He had a 0 bounty up until then, right? So, after all of that, the idea is if he never found the Yami Yami no Mi, he maybe never would have gone into action. Here's a question for you, going along with that. If Thatch never found the Yami Yami, or if Blackbeard never had an opportunity to find it or steal it, would he have ever enacted his plan? Like how long was he willing to wait? Would Blackbeard have been like 75 years old, and, you know, Whitebeard would have probably have been dead of just natural causes by that point? Would he have still been on the crew? I guess Marco would have been the captain after that. Would Blackbeard at like age 75 have been like, well, I spent my entire life looking for the Yami Yami no Mi to start my plans, but I never found it. Oh well, I guess I'll just retire into a bakery in the South Blue. Blackbeard's Crumpets. That has a good... and then he just dies of a heart attack. You know, like, would that have happened? Would he have never done anything? Would he have just stayed on Whitebeard's crew, playing the role of an ally, and then eventually just retiring from the pirate life, or just dying of natural causes? What would have happened? Like, was it like age 50 for him? Like, age 50, say ha ha ha. If I don't find the Yami Yami no Mi by age 50, I'm just gonna try Plan B. Plan Blackbeard. I don't know, but I feel like part of the reason he's an emperor is, yeah, he had the Gura Gura and he had the Yami Yami. He had both of them at the same time, plus the powers of the Yami Yami being such an unusually, unusual in terms of power, but just also a very powerful Logia in and of itself. Those things together, plus his schemes that he's had for decades, that's what led to him being an emperor at the end of the day. And I just don't think those would have kicked off without him getting the Yami Yami no Mi. And yes, while Blackbeard was very, intelligent and scheming and stuff, and he was able to deal the scar on Shanks, Shanks was younger as well at this point. I feel like Blackbeard, without any devil fruit versus any of the other emperors, those emperors would have won. Shanks was not an emperor at the time, If Shanks, as he is right now, fought against Blackbeard as he was back then without a devil fruit, I think Shanks would beat him. Same thing with Whitebeard, same thing with Kaido, same thing with Big Mom, okay? Not saying it would be an easy fight, but I'm saying they would be able to beat him. He needs to have the Yami Yami and the Gura Gura. Unless we find out some other ability that he has, it's confirmed. Oh, yeah, he has 3 souls inside of him, so he's, you have to kill him 3 times in order to make sure he stays dead or something. Like that throws variables into the mix that we just don't know. But, yeah. So that's what I think. I think Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, they would have all still been emperors without their devil fruits. Makes them stronger, but they're still strong enough on their own. Shanks, already we know. And then Blackbeard, I do not think would have been an emperor without it. So, let me know down below what you think about that. But before we go, we have to tackle some GOAT facts. Let's cue that hard rock intro, baby! Yeah! Let's go! GOAT! 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 Go back! Yeah! All right, today on GOAT Facts, we are going to be talking about what might very well be the rarest goat species on the entire planet. We're talking, of course, about the Arapahoa goat. The Arapahoa goat. That's a fun name to say. So the Arapahoa goat is native to a tiny little island. Arapahoa, I think it used to be called Arapahoa Island, but now it's pronounced differently, but I'm just going to... Arapahoa goat, Arapahoa Island. It's located north of New Zealand's South Island. I don't know, in New Zealand, do you just call them the South Island Island and the North Island? I don't know. But, let me know. Anyway, so on the northern end of the southern island, there's a little archipelago of other islands, like smaller islands there, and Arapahoa Island is located right there on the circle on the map, okay? It's a tiny little island, and the story goes, back in the 1700s, back in like 1773 and 1777, Captain Cook, the famous explorer, Captain Cook, for some reason, released a few goats on this island. I don't know why he did that. I'm sure there was a reason, but he released some goats. 1773, and then he came back a few years later, and he released some more goats. All right. Flash forward about, 60 years or so. It's the 19th century now. It's around 1840 or so. And whalers around the area purportedly mention that this island, Arapahoa Island, is just swarming with goats. Like just a huge herd of goats. What's the name for a group of goats? You think I would know that? I'll let you tell me and I'll use it next time. Whatever. So just positively brimming with goats at the time, all right? It's like, man, this is Goat Island or whatever like that, okay? So there are a bunch of goats on this island, but it's like a relatively like isolated island, especially back then. I believe there was like native tribes around the area. I think actually one of the reasons why Captain Cook gave or left the goats on the island was he gave it to like the chief of like the tribe living in that area at the time, like as gifts. I think that was the reason. But anyway, for a good chunk of the 19th and into the 20th century, I mean, like, the goat population kind of thrived because there was really, like, every now and then maybe some hunters would show up on the island and kill some of the goats. Like, yeah, there's an island over there that's filled with goats. Let's go shoot some or whatever. Like, get some back for, like, farming purposes or whatever. But around 1970, the New Zealand government issued, like, a culling of the goats. I guess because, like, they would, like, damage the local flora and everything like that. Like, they're eating everything, right? So they went to go cull the goats, except they kind of like killed too many, so it was at the point where they're critically endangered, and that continues to this day. They are very, very close to being extinct. The Arapahoa goat, current estimates, only 150 of them exist on the planet. And they're in sanctuaries, of course. Some of them got taken to England, where they're in zoos there and in, like, captivity, because their numbers are so ridiculously low, they could easily become extinct, all right? So it was because of the works of one Betty Rowe that she wanted to save these goats and make sure that they didn't get wiped out by the government. So she, fought tirelessly for that. So because of her efforts, there's some of them, because without her, they probably would have just been wiped out back in the 70s, okay? But they still continue to this day. Here are the Arapahoa goats, the rarest goat species on the entire planet. So pretty interesting goat fact, I must say. So, yeah, thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Later, everyone.